Hey guys, Poro here with another video, this time with my second team breakdown for MSI 2025. This time I'll be going over GAM, the second seed from the LCP. GAM wasn't actually projected to be here, as many thought it would be Talon to clinch the second spot after their 5-game upper bracket finals banger against CFO. GAM proved they belong in the slot though after taking down Talon 3-1, and then barely losing to CFO 3-2 in grand finals. For anyone who watches international tournaments frequently, this GAM roster should look pretty familiar with 3.5 returning players. Similar to CFO, GAM have something that resembles a 6-man roster, with 2 mid laners in Emo and Ares. However, unlike CFO, this 6-man unit doesn't appear to actually be a fully functioning 6-man unit, and feels more like GAM testing out both mids to see who the permanent best fit for the team is. We'll get to those two later, and I'll start with talking about their top laner Kiaya. Kiaya is a very strong player, and is probably the player on the team with the highest ceiling. He's proven himself at internationals before, particularly in the 2022 Asian Games, where he had an impressive performance against the Chinese team, who featured star players Bin, Shun, JJ, Knight, Elk, and Mako. In terms of who can step up to carry a game individually, and for who has the highest likelihood to be able to hold up against top-tier laners, Kiaya is your guy on this team. He isn't perfect though, and makes his fair share of mistakes. Most commonly, it seems like Kiaya has trouble tracking where the enemy jungler is. A lot of his early deaths come from not respecting common gank timers and taking super aggressive trades at the wrong time. If he can clean these up though, he's definitely a formidable 1v1 laner. Their jungler, Levi, is the heart and soul of this team. While he may not be the best Vietnamese player of all time, he's certainly the greatest. In his 13 VCS splits, he has never once not made the grand final. And of those 13 appearances, he's been the victor in 10 of them. He's been to 5 World Championships, the only ones he missed were because of COVID or because he was imported to a different region. This will be his 4th MSI, and once again, he's made it to every single MSI that he could have qualified for, only missing the tournament due to being imported, COVID, or overlapping participation in the SEA Games. In terms of accomplishments, this guy has it all. And on top of that, his game knowledge is good enough to match his longevity. He has an absolute champion ocean, and oftentimes shoulders the role of being the primary fight starter and playmaker of the team. Unfortunately, Levi is well past his prime when it comes to mechanics, and he oftentimes can make seemingly basic errors on champions that can lose his team fights or create missed opportunities. Emo seems to be who GAM has decided to go with for their starting mid laner. In the entirety of playoffs, Ares only played 3 games compared to Emo's 16, and Emo played the entirety of lower bracket finals and grand finals. He's a young player, only 19 years old, and is already good enough to be arguably the best mid laner remaining from the VCS. In terms of big weaknesses, I noticed that it seems like Emo struggles to figure out how to connect properly with his team when prepping an objective or moving to a skirmish. There were multiple times in playoffs where he would disrespect enemy vision, or take a greedy path to a fight and get punished for it, which is a death sentence against elite teams. Ares is the other mid laner for GAM, and I don't expect him to play any games in this tournament. If he does though, he's likely to be playing a champion like Akali, Ahri, Azir, or other champions with high mobility. He's overall a fairly solid player, and I wouldn't be surprised if he's contesting Emo for the starting spot come summer. The one new pickup GAM got during the offseason from 2024 to 2025 was their new ADC Artemis, who essentially completely replaced EasyHoon. This is a very solid upgrade in my opinion. I thought EasyHoon was a middle-of-the-pack ADC domestically, and a bottom-of-the-barrel player at any international event he's gone to. In contrast, Artemis has either been the best or second best ADC in VCS at any given time for the past 2.5 years or so, and it's about time he got a shot on the premier Vietnamese team. There's nothing too specific to note about Artemis. He has a reliable champion pool, is a pretty good laner, and knows how to do his job well enough in teamfights. He's basically a solid plug-and-play ADC who could function well on just about any team, but doesn't have any particularly stellar talents to point out in my opinion. Finally, GAM's support is Elio, and who I think is the biggest individual weakness of this team. Much like Kaiwing, Elio is a melee support specialist who can only play champions like Rakan, Nautilus, and Braum. Unlike Kaiwing though, he's only decent at these champions at best, and he has a significant skill drop-off upon playing anything else such as Renata, Nico, Bard, Elise, or any of the other potential ranged support options that function in the current meta. His melee support pool isn't even as large as someone like Kaiwing, and he struggles insanely quickly inside of the Fearless Draft format. LCP does have supports who can pilot lane-dominant supports well, such as Woody and Sulong, but neither of those supports ended up making it to Grand Finals, which means that neither Kaiwing or Elio had their big draft weakness exposed for that final series. However, I have some major concerns regarding Elio when it comes to Game 4 and 5 of Fearless, and even Game 3 if enemy teams are willing to target it hard enough. It's a huge draft liability to not be able to pick champions like Nico or Renata, as it renders ADC picks like Kalista, Ashe, Varus, or Caitlyn somewhere between mediocre to borderline unplayable. As such, the entire theme of GAM's drafts often have to be warped around what their support can or can't play. As a team, GAM is very fun to watch in my opinion. Similar to a team like Shopify Rebellion from the LTA, or WE from the LPL, or Nongshim from the LCK, GAM is the LCP equivalent of the boys. They are a team whose impact is greater than the sum of their parts, and who finds their success primarily from always being on the same page. I think the deciding factor as to why GAM was able to defeat a team like Talon, who on paper has much better players, was that GAM just has much better teamwork. GAM excels in picking cohesive drafts that have clear goals, and then having all 5 members be on the exact same page in terms of how and when they want to play for their comps. Early game for GAM is messy. Their players make basic laning mistakes and rotation errors, and they can often find themselves further behind than they might want. The way GAM wins games is through their fantastic mid games. More than any other team in the LCP, GAM knows how to effectively push the pace of the game after lane phase to generate advantages at a blistering rate. Through sheer coordination, they can find themselves in the driver's seat most of the time, which is what makes them such an enjoyable team to watch for me. GAM does tend to have problems closing out games efficiently when they have big leads, and I think this may be an important factor at MSI, but it's honestly a problem that most non-elite level teams have. In order to showcase GAM's strengths and weaknesses as a team, I want to show off their win against CFO in their first encounter early on in playoffs, which is quite possibly my favorite game played in any region this split, so I'll let the other Poro take over. Okay, I'm gonna be for real here. I actually misremembered which game it was. It's kind of understandable because in the GAM versus CFO win, GAM picked an extremely similar team comp. They had Varus Nautilus instead of Kai'Sa Nautilus, and then they had Nocturne Talia instead of Pantheon Talia. So it was basically the same shit, right? But this is the game that I was thinking of. It's actually GAM first game versus Vikings. This is the first game that both teams are playing in playoffs. The winner of this series will move on to play CFO in a best of 3. I think that this team comp perfectly encapsulates who GAM is as a team in terms of draft. For context, Vikings early picked Nico, so GAM knew that the Nico was there. And because their support has such an abysmal champion pool, in game 1, they are forced to pick Kai'Sa Nautilus into Ashe Nico, which is just absolutely insane to me about it. The fact that this could ever be a situation that a team can find themselves in is crazy to me. That we're picking Kai'Sa, who is one of the weakest laning ADCs because of how short her range is. We're just picking that into Ashe Nico because our support just does not have the capability to play a lane dominant support. So that's kind of the situation that their bot lane can find themselves in. For their top lane, Kiaya is the lane dominant player, so they always try to give him a favorable matchup. In this situation, he has an Aatrox counterpick into Sion, so that makes sense. The real focal point of this draft, and the super interesting part of this draft that I wanted to highlight, is that Levi and Emo are playing Pantheon Talia. Now, this team comp is not, in my opinion, is not an easy team comp to execute. This is a very difficult team comp to execute. You have to play your mid game extremely aggressively in order to come out with advantages, because if you look at the other team comp, they've got Sion, they've got Wukong Nico for follow-up engage, they have solid front to back structure with Victor and Ashe. It's a lot easier to play out Vikings comp. Vikings have advantages, they have clearly winning bot lane, so their goal of what they want to play for early is defined. They have more structured team fight, so it's on GAM to try to find some kind of advantage in the mid game to push this game forward. So let's watch this game and see how it goes. Okay, so this is the first big moment of the game that I want to go over. In this situation, Vikings are attempting to play for the Void Grubs. GAM really don't have good setup to contest this initially, but then Style over pushes, and GAM are going to fully collapse and kill them here. At this point, the entire situation of the game changes, because Vikings in theory, should no longer be able to take all 3 grubs here. Maybe they can take 1 or maybe 2 if they're lucky, but GAM's goal here should be to recapture the area and then try to force the Wukong out of the grub pit, so that way they can pick up whatever's remaining, right? Even if it's 1 or if it's 2 or 3, their goal should be to move to grubs here now since the enemy ADC entered. This is one of the big issues that Emo has right now as a player that I pointed out, is that he tends to be pretty uncoordinated when it comes to how to approach these kind of early game situations in terms of how to connect with this team. Like right now, the goal should be that GAM moves in as a unit. They find some way to set up either a clear line of vision, or they'll just walk directly to mid lane, because the idea is that they want to connect the Talia with their team, right? You have the Scion versus Aatrox bot lane. The Scion does not have teleport, so he's not going to be here anytime soon. He also doesn't have ult. He actually, he tried to proxy a wave, so that way he could get to the grubs, but then the Aatrox just forced him off the proxy, and the Scion had to ult back. So the Scion has no ult, no TP. He's out of the fight. So this is effectively a 3v4. So if GAM can connect all 4 of their team members, they should be fine to take pretty much any 3v4 they want and win. So that's the situation. Unfortunately, Emo doesn't properly know how to connect with his team, and he gets picked out here, which makes the situation a lot harder for GAM. All of a sudden, it's a lot harder for them to try to contest these grubs. And in the end, Vikings end up getting 2. So this is the type of situation that should never have happened. Like, realistically, the Vikings probably should have gotten 1 and then had to back out. But because GAM have some struggles early game, they end up losing out on tiny little advantages like this, right? And especially in a game like this, where you have a comp that's this difficult to execute, you really cannot afford to fall behind early, because you have to make up the ground in the mid game. And so this is kind of what I'm saying, where GAM has problems early, and they end up falling behind early, right? But, and you know, Emo made the mistake, but everything after this point is just an absolute GAM masterclass. I just want, like, we're not even going to go over this game that much longer. I just want to point out how fearless this team is at playing their high execution team comp, because the way that you play this is that you have to either Pantheon ult in or Talia ult in, you full stand and engage, the Kai'Sa like launches in over the top, and then the Nautilus follows by like fully committing, right? So it's just like a full dive comp where you have to fully commit to every single play. Every single player has to be on the same page. And I just want to show you guys how many times GAM pulls the trigger in mid-game to push the pace of this game. Okay, so this is the first one. At this point, GAM has fallen even further behind. They're now over 2k gold behind. They've just given over the Herald. Dragons are tied, so Vikings are pretty happy here. Check out this play. Check out the confidence on this play. Bam. One positive play for their team. Now check out this right here. They're going to use the Talia ult, section off the Victor, so that way they can full hit the mid turret. So this is something that's like fairly standard with Talia, but it's still nice to see a team who are willing to use Talia ult like this to get an advantage. Okay. Pantheon ult just came back up. Another positive play. Check out this one. Pantheon also, once again, it basically just came back up again. Okay, and you cannot make this shit up. The Pantheon ult just came back again. It literally just came back. Okay, look at this. This is like literally a few minutes later. Now check out this. They have Baron. Their setup is really nice. They've got their bot lane mid, they have their Pantheon who can get to either lane with his ultimate in the middle. Now GAM want to take this top tier 2 on this wave, so you can see that this Holly is setting up for another wall. And there comes the wall, and they're going to use this wall to take that tier 2 turret. So just a really pretty way to use Holly on a Baron push. Check out this play. So this is another example where right now GAM are trying to control the space of the dragon so they can deny the soul. They dropped the mid wave for this, which is pretty bad. And then so Emo is really trying to come back to collect this mid wave, but he again I feel like this is just a problem with Emo where he struggles a bit on objective setups. He's going to walk through here and get caught out, but look at how fast GAM responded this play. Like, they're just the boys. Like, it's just the boys. It's awesome. Check out this one. Here comes another one. Like, GAM were losing the game in the team comp that should probably struggle harder later on if they're behind. But they just brute force this combo of theirs that they drafted for so many times that the Vikings just can't handle it and they crumble under the pressure and they end up losing this game. I just think that this game was awesome, and it was super fun to just watch GAM just slam the combo over and over again and be completely fearless and fully commit over and over again. So that's all that I wanted to show with this game. I think that this team is super fun to watch. Overall, GAM is a team with a lot of small to medium very exploitable weaknesses, but with one big strength. I think in this tournament, GAM will struggle, and I expect them to finish somewhere in the 8th through 10th range. However, team coordination like GAM has is not something that can be taught easily, and it's a fantastic building block for this team moving forward. I would love to see this team use this tournament as a way to grow and gain experience, so that they can come back to LCP and solidify their spot as a top 2 team in the region. That's all I have for this video. 8 breakdowns left to go. I'll see you all next time. Bye!